There are moments in life when sorrow doesn't come politely. It does not knock. It breaks the door. Some of you listening right now know that feeling too well. You've walked through days where the mind feels split, the heart overwhelmed, and the world suddenly too heavy to carry. You've looked at your own life and said, I don't know how to stand under this. This young woman reached that point, not because she was weak, but because she was human, fragile clay under extraordinary pressure. Her husband carried the burden with her. He tried every possible means to help her heal, quiet conversations, gentle support, the best care he could offer. But her sorrow deepened, her mind felt clouded, and her family lived with constant worry, not knowing how to lift her out of that fog. They feared for her well-being. They feared for her future. They feared the shadows that sometimes hover on a hurting mind. But here is the turning point. Here is the moment when the God of George Muller's testimony steps into the picture. A friend, just one friend, decided to carry her name into a prayer meeting, and that changed everything. The friend stood among believers and spoke her name to heaven. No dramatic speeches, no perfect words, just a burdened heart saying, Lord, remember her, restore her, bring light back into her life, heal what pain has broken. And heaven heard. The first night brought no fireworks. The second brought no sudden transformation. Sometimes God moves like lightning, other times like morning light, rising inch by inch, quietly, steadily, faithfully. They continued praying. Then a revival began in her town, an awakening that stirred hearts, awakened faith, and softened long-toughened spirits. For her, attending those meetings was not easy. She felt unworthy, abandoned, convinced that God had stepped away. But her friends lovingly brought her anyway, gently nudging her toward the very presence she feared had rejected her. And the change began. The first miracle was sleep returning to her rest where rest had fled. Then joy, small at first, like the flicker of a candle. Then clarity, peace replacing the storm. And in time, beautiful, unmistakable, undeniable, her full strength returned, her laughter returned, her mind settled, her hope revived. She became a living testimony of what the psalmist wrote in Psalm 3:3. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, and the lifter up of my head. You see, God didn't just give her stability, he lifted her head. Her recovery became radiant, a miracle written not in the clouds but in her countenance. Her gratitude overflowed because she knew without question that God had stepped into the very center of her suffering. And she stands as one more witness in the long line of George Muller's stories, showing that prayer does not just touch heaven, it changes earth. Maybe you listening right now understand how overwhelming life can feel. You've faced loss, betrayal, unexpected hardship. You've carried burdens quietly because you didn't know where to lay them. Your mind has been tired, your heart stretched thin, and like the young woman in the story, perhaps you've wondered if God still sees you. He does. Psalm 34:18 says, The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those crushed in spirit. Sometimes God's answers do not arrive in the thunder. They arrive in the footsteps of praying friends. Sometimes He does not restore instantly. He restores gradually. Sometimes the healing doesn't begin when you feel strong. It begins when you feel weakest. Because grace does not wait for you to be perfect. Grace meets you where you collapse. And the God who restored that young woman's mind, peace, and joy is still the same God listening to prayers today. This is the message George Muller dedicated his life to proving. Not merely that God hears prayer, but that He answers prayer. Even the prayers prayed through tears. Even the prayers whispered in confusion. Even the prayers offered when faith feels small. Someone prayed for her. Someone carried her name before God. And in the way only God can orchestrate, He restored what life tried to break, not through force, but through gentle mercy. The enemy tried to crush her spirit. Grief tried to silence her hope. Fear tried to suffocate her future. But God stepped in with healing. The revival meetings she attended were the turning point, not because the Building had power, but because God's presence fills empty spaces with life again. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Rest for the mind, rest for the heart, rest for the soul." And as she came hesitant, broken, unsure, he welcomed her, not with judgment, but with compassion, not with distance, but with nearness. This is what God still does with broken people. He lifts, he restores, he renews, he heals, he answers. And because of that truth, the story ends not with despair but with gratitude, not with darkness, but with a glorious sunrise. She became a testimony that God answers fervent, persistent, faith-filled prayer. And right now, yes, now even your own story is not beyond his reach. Your sorrow is not beyond his comfort. Your confusion is not beyond his wisdom. Your weakness is not beyond his strength. What God did for her, he can do for you. Call on him. Bring your burden. Whisper your need. And watch him do what only heaven can. Because the God who restored her is still restoring today.